All right. So moving on, the other movie I threw on for old time's sake this week is Air Force One. I was just sort of in the mood for some action. I wanted to get sort of a Die Hard on a thing, wanted to stick on a Die Hard on a things genre, and Air Force One is definitely my personal favorite Die Hard on a thing movie. It's just an all around good action film with sort of a mild patriotic twist and with just a little bit of politics sprinkled in. And I every time I turn this on, I just miss Jerry Goldsmith. That he was one of the greats in terms of film scores. I mean, whether it be Star Trek, Alien, Basic Instinct, he just had a really great way of encapsulating what a film is, and he 100% does that with this movie. He essentially writes America the score is what he does. And I get it whenever election years roll around. I'm always amused at because inevitably it will show up on Republican conventions 100% of the time. If you're watching that, it's like up there it is. You couldn't like we knew you were going to fit it in there somewhere, and it's almost a little bit of a stereotype, I would say, at this point. If you're a Republican and you're at an event, you're probably going to dig up the Air Force One score at some point. But what is kind of interesting, going, of course, it was I believe 1997, and it's interesting seeing some of the things that are dated at this point. It mostly does a good job of being general enough that you can watch it in any era, but there's definitely some 90s isms that you look back on and don't necessarily age. The one that really sort of caught me was the sort of rose-colored glasses that we were looking at Russia with at the time, because you start off and it's post Cold War. It's just like, oh, they're gonna be, it's right, it's gonna be like us, and now we're gonna be good buddies. And you've got the president of Russia is depicted in the film as sort of this jovial, nice guy trying to fix his country, and we all kind of know that's not how it ended up going. Now that we're almost 30 years on from the release of this film, and it's like, well, there may be a little bit more led by Gary Oldman's character in this movie, and that's very sad. Um, and I will say, like, the other thing that this movie does well, that a lot of sort of politically tinged movies don't do so well anymore, is it keeps it very nonpartisan. It's very sort of explicit. It's pretty explicit that we don't know. The audience doesn't know what party the characters are from. Um, we don't know, and it's sort of it's in weird ways. There's smatterings of sort of both Republican and Democrat policy that are sort of looped in, and basically it just sort of boils down to just America good, terrorist bad, action on plane, which is, from an entertainment perspective, is, I think, fine. I do have some questions about how like world police interventionist Harrison Ford's character sort of is he's pitching some pretty world police type stuff at the top of the movie, and I'm like, I don't know how I feel about that. That could, you know, I don't know if that necessarily was gonna work out. But anywho, the other sort of nice thing about it is whenever you cut back to the Situation Room with the vice president, and on the home front end of dealing with this this situation they find themselves in, you've got room full of people with a lot of opinions being sort of ideas and thoughts going back and forth, and none I don't think any of the characters are treated as just straight up bad guys. Like, I was like, Dean Stockwell's character as the Secretary of Defense is sort of a little bit adversarial to Glenn Close's vice president, but the points he makes are largely well-founded points that I would say in a real world situation should be taken under consideration. And that's where smart writing comes in, where you have lots of ideas and lots of ideas, and you try to like lean yourself towards the best one. Mm. And I would argue that this time around watching it, that Harrison Ford, he actually at some point early in the film, Dean Stockwell says that 50 people, to keep the world from setting on fire, 50 losing 50 people might, like, you know, we should probably be able to live with that if it means not having global catastrophe. And on a smaller scale, the president on the plane kind of makes sort of that same type of decision when Gary Oldman whacks I don't think she's the press secretary, but he has a choice to either show up and save her or stay down in the cargo hold and keep trying to save the day. And ultimately he sacrifices somebody in order to keep the fight going. And it's really quite a well acted, well cut sequence, and it still hits really, really well in 2025 as it did in 1997. So it's a very, very well cut film. It's very well cut, very, very tense. Um, but it's like, hey, another couple. I, again, it's like just little, just sort of retroactive things to notice when, just generally speaking, when in for Hollywood, and if you're making anything with the president or the executive branch, when if a Democrat is president at the given moment, um, America is great. We're all happy, 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 joy, joy. It's log, it's big, it's heavy, it's wood. Um, when a Republican is president, it's like everything is awful, awful. It's just everything is horrifying. So it's just like that's as old as time. I don't think that's something that's ever going to change. But it's sort of an eye roll, an eye roll, a little bit of an eye roll thing for me personally. And I also did get a kick out of, at some point the news puts out a bullshit story that really sort of screws things up for the vice president. And the news net the network, of course, that put out the bullshit in order to be fast and not right was, of course, CNN. So the more things change, the more they stay exactly the same. Um, Anywho, moving on from the political aspects of the film, I will say I think Harrison Ford is probably the ultimate male action actor. Like, he just hits all of the right notes. And so, in physically, it would be really hard to look like an Arnold or a Sly Stallone. But you probably, as an average guy, you could manage a looking like a Harrison Ford if you tried hard enough. And he's, I would say, tough, but he's got the tough guy persona, but he's also incredibly emotive. Like, if you go back to that scene where the press secretary is off, um his expression, like, he has no dialogue in that scene. Everything is just this raw emotion and just anger and frustration, and what do I do, and just absolute sadness that this has just happened. And nobody quite sells that quite like Harrison Ford does. I think maybe Mel Gibson has really great facial ticks and facial expressions as well. If you go look at The Patriot, some fantastic stuff. And the other thing that I this for this movie, I saw it when it came out, not in theaters, but we rented it, and it was probably is the first film I ever saw with Glenn Close, first film I ever saw William H. Macy in. And they're all great supporting performances. Of course, you've got your really strong lead in Harrison Ford, but the movie really works because it's got a great supporting cast around them in every, they're again, it's like there are no small parts, only small actors, and everybody brought it. And like one of my favorite moments in the film is when they're toward the beginning, when the plane is getting taken over and the pilots are trying to land it. The guy who plays the pilot, um, not a named character, but he delivers some really, really intense, great lines. And that's again really building a small part, but really, this actor really, really made something with the little amount of screen time that he had. So definitely it's still a 4 out of 5, 5 movie for me. I don't quite have it in me to graduate it to 5 stars. I don't it doesn't quite have the quality that Die Hard does. Die Hard is a perfect film. Um, you can poke holes. There are holes you can poke in the plot if of Air Force One if you really, really do try. Um Yeah, and let's say and I don't want to just before I move on from Air Force One, I don't want to undersell how great Glenn Close is in this movie. It was 1997. She's playing a female president, and she's extremely strong, extremely tough, and um, it was the whole concept was when people when you have sort of, I would say, people on the left who say, "No, we could never handle a female president or a female vice president." I don't believe that. Um, like, because back in the '90s, you have say this movie where it never felt weird. Like that there is no point where I felt like, oh, this would never happen. And again, a lot of that fantastic performance from Glenn Close. So go back if you need some action, go back and rewatch Air Force One. It basically holds up minus some minus some old 90s isms. And it's like I honestly I've always been curious as if I don't know if there any new Air Force Ones have been built since that movie came out, but I'm genuinely would be curious if um anyone in the government looked at that movie and said, "Oh, like here's some like sciencey, here's some, some things that we can add to the plane. This'll like I like that idea. Let's do it." And sort of, Star Trek type pulling from fiction. I somehow doubt they have an escape pod now, but it would be awfully cool if they saw this movie and threw one in.